So Tracy, can you keep?
All right, so I heard Jeff, Amanda.
I'm here.
So we know.
Okay, Wynn? Catherine?
She's waving.
Yeah, I'm on here. I just had to find my mute button.
Okay, so Wynn's here. I didn't hear Catherine.
Oh, that was Catherine that said hi.
So do we have Wynn?
Yes.
Wynn is muted. I
Yes.
saw her earlier.
Okay, then I can call this meeting to order, and I've taken attendance. I am open for a motion to approve the prioritized agenda. I can't even get out priority.
I make a motion to approve the prioritized agenda.
Thank you, sir. Do I hear a second?
I'll give a second to approve.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed?
We have to do it as a roll call over the internet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. Let's see, Board President Amanda Galbraith.
Yes.
Board Member Catherine Cullen.
Yes.
Board Member Wynn Coleman.
Yes.
Finance Committee Chair, Vice Chair Jeffrey Morgan.
Yes.
Noreen Scott, yes. All right, let's begin with D, the business, the balanced budget expenditures discussion. Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. So this afternoon, our plan is to review the operational budget in regard to expenditures, and that will be our focus for this afternoon. And, you know, obviously we have a very extensive and broad budget. My focus this afternoon will be on those items that either saw a large increase or large decrease, and to go through those departments and divisions that saw those large increases or decrease, and why that occurred. And so my comparison will be this new fiscal, moving into the new fiscal year versus the current fiscal year. So I will be starting with the superintendent's budget, which essentially includes fine arts, athletics, RADA, student services. And within those departments, there are also divisions. And so when you look at the department history form that is on the screen right now, you also have access in your budget binder for this document as well. So we're going to start with the superintendent's budget. And I said we have the fine arts budget. Within fine arts, you have a number of subdivisions, such as art, audio-visual, band, chorus, dance, drama, FAEA, which is fine arts elementary education, is essentially what that is. Again, the fine arts orchestra, and those are the subdivisions that make up the overall fine arts department. So one of the subgroups, you will see that there is a little over a $10,000 increase in the art budget, and that has to do with an increase in general supplies. It's just the supplies that they use. And typically what has happened in the past is that some of the school sites were providing the art department with materials, and other school sites were not. So Kurt wanted to kind of consolidate this. So we put more money in that budget. This way, those general supplies for art will be handled by Kurt. And so that is why we have an increase there. Athletics, you will see that there is an approximate 7% increase in athletics. And there's a couple of things going on, a couple of changes going on with athletics. The first one is we did take some money out of projects, but we also gave athletics what we call SB9 money. So SB9 stands for Senate Bill 9, which was passed many moons ago. And what it does, SB9 allows school district to tax its jurisdiction in order to provide special funding for certain projects that fall within the parameters of the Senate Bill 9. Typically, what we do is we spend SB9 money on maintenance and repair and other items such as purchasing equipment. But the main focus of SB9 really is to do kind of capital improvements or renovation work. And the difficulty that the athletics department has is they don't have what we call 4,000 money. So again, I just want to kind of reiterate when Arlene talks about the chart of accounts, typically we'll talk about 1,000 money, 2,000 money, and 4,000 money. So the 1,000 money is instructional funds. The 2,000 money is support funds to support that instructional operations. And then the 4,000 money, which is very difficult to come by, is essentially capital improvements. And the reason why 4,000 money is difficult to come by is because PED, the department, they do not want us to spend operational money on renovation work. The problem that we have is that when we do have renovation, is we do have to go to PED to seek approval. And from time to time, we have sought that approval. But what has happened in the last couple of years, PED has informed the district statewide that they are not inclined to approve operational money for such things as renovation work. So consequently, what happens is because we have a limited amount of SB9 money, when some of the departments want to do renovation work, there isn't a means to get that done. Even though we may have operational money, we can't get PED to approve that money. So what we do, and what we're doing this year, is we're going to give athletics some funding so they can get some of those projects done. And a lot of those projects typically have to do with fencing, for example, at the ball fields. So that's a change for athletics. The other change with athletics is that we anticipated a nice growth in our gate receipts projections. However, with this COVID-19, we decided that we are unlikely to see those increased in projections, and so we will actually most likely the gate receipts will actually decrease. And so the one unfortunate thing with gate receipts is that we can't use gate receipts for capital improvement projects, which typically, which is unfortunate, but that's the way it is. So we have to use SB9 money in order to make improvements upon the athletic fields or bond money. The next division that you'll see has a pretty good increase is drama. And the reason for this increase is because we put a lot more money into student travel. So a number of years ago, we had some issues in regard to athletic student travel and the fine arts department student travel. So we're trying to equalize those expenditures. And so we believe by adding more money to the drama is that we will better equalize that expenditure between student travel with the athletic department and the fine arts department. And so that's why you see an increase in drama. The next area that has seen, it appears that there's a big decrease in the fine arts department. And so again, fine arts, as you will, that's kind of, I guess, the umbrella department, which houses everything. Typically, it houses the employees to include the administration. But what we have done this year, and the big change this year, it appears that there's a big decrease in fine arts, but there is not. And what we've done is, when you look at our 910B5 form, which is made up of a number of units and a number of categories, one category is the FAEA. And so what we are trying to do with our chart of accounts and the way we organize our budget structure is to make sure that it is in line with state PED forms such as the 910B5. So if the state comes down and says, well, how much money are you spending on FAEA? We'll be able, through our Alio system and through our chart of accounts, to determine that exact number. And so what has happened in all the years in the past is the fine arts and FAEA, it was kind of merged. And so it was very difficult to actually distinguish what was really FAE money and what was fine arts money. And if you think about it, it all really goes into one big pot anyway. But through this organization, we're able to actually separate it. It's just a better accounting system where we can clearly see that all the FAE money that's generated through the SEG is properly accounted for in our budget system. And so when you look in the summary sheet, you can see that we have a category FAEA, and it accounts for over $2.1 million. So that those essentially parallel the 910 SB5. So that's why we have the change there. Although there's, the operations is essentially similar, on paper and budgetarily, it looks like there's a big increase or decrease with those two funds. The next big category in regard to changes in the superintendent's budget are nurses. Nurses fall under student services, and we've had a discussion about this a number of months ago, and that is the state changed the regulation allowing for better supervision of specifically when students travel, that either a nurse or somebody who is trained in diabetic management is available in order to accommodate the student that may be going into some type of diabetic coma or some type of seizure due to diabetes. And so because of that regulation, and we still don't have a real good history on the expenses of that because it just started January of 2020, and we've been in this COVID-19 thing for a while, so we don't have good history. We took a stab at it, And we know that we're going to have an increased expenditure, but that is the reason for the increase right there, is just basically to take care of that regulation. The next big change in the superintendent's budget is the superintendent's budget. Again, the umbrella organization. And there appears to be a decrease in funding, but what we did there is we moved out legal and we created a new department, legal counsel. And so this way we have segregated duties between superintendent duties and legal duties. And this way we can better budget and better account for the superintendent's duties versus the legal duties. So I think what I'll do, Madam Chair, if it's okay, is let me break now for questions in regard to the superintendent's budget before I move on to the chief academics officer budget.
Okay. Any questions? Let's start with Board Member Cullen.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Board Member Cullen. So and that was some of my questions that I had sent you all about the FAEA, because that was a new line item, as well as the fine arts with the difference, because it was showing that it was about 200,000 less. So they have not lost any money, fine arts, for this next fiscal year?
No, actually, there is
An increase?
I remember correctly, there is some like minor increases to some of the line items, but their budget, their operations are essentially the same.
Okay, all right, thank you. That was all of the questions that I have, Noreen.
Board Member Coleman.
No, my questions were answered. Thank you, Mike, for going through all those different things.
Board President Galbraith.
No questions. Thanks, Mike.
Vice Chair Jeffrey Morgan.
No, Mike cleared it up. I was just concerned about some of the acronyms. Mike, thank you. I appreciate it.
Fine.
Okay, so the next area is the Chief Academic Officer, which is Carl Eppelman. And so he supervises a number of departments. Specifically, the larger departments are CNI, CTE, special services, school improvement officers are the larger departments within the Chief Academic Officer's department. And so some big changes there is in CNI, you'll see an increase in the CNI elementary budget, and that has to do with we had to increase the salaries due to substitutes. And so what we are looking at is because of a math adoption that will occur, there will be additional training, and because of that additional training, we're going to have to hire some more subs. In addition to that, we do have an increased cost of substitute based on an increased salary. Increased salary that occurred last year.
Okay, do we need to give you a break for a minute, or?
No, I'm good, I'm sorry.
All right, no, that's okay.
The next increase has to do with extended learning. And so we've added, in regard to quite a bit, we've added about $100,000 to extended learning. This is a separate category in the SCG. And that extended learning, we've increased the general supplies district-wide for the entire program. The next area of increase has to do with school improvement. And that increase is due to a professional development. And so Jana and Renee were doing their training, and they were supposed to have their training done this fiscal year. But what happened, again, because of COVID, that training got extended to next year. So we had to increase the budget so they could get their training completed. The next area of increase has to do with CTE. Although the changes are very slight, what we are going to experience is a reduction on grant funds in order to fund CTE, but we're moving forward with CTE, and it's even though it's not really a new program, we're organizing it such so it is essentially its separate department. And if you recall, in the 2020 bond, we do have in the bond issue the construction of some type of CTE academy. So this particular year was the first year where we actually offered automotive, which has been absolutely wonderful. It's a shame that, again, I think we all agree that this COVID-19 thing is really hit us hard and really has hurt all of our organizations, but specifically our students. But it's a great program. We got a lot of kids registered. And so we hope to continue that and other type of career technical type of educations under the leadership of Dave Latham. And so that's why you'll see that, again, a new division that's really set aside. Operationally, things are really running the same. But again, we wanted to segregate that program budgetarily. The other change or increase is the Student Support Center, which we've talked about a number of times. We, at this point, really are not 100% certain that we are going to move forward with that. But in our balanced budget, we do have budget, and we have set that budget aside. And so even though currently we have what's called the AES program or the alternative education, and that right now is housed in the Rancho Middle School, our plan was to move that to the new building. And we'll see if that is actually going to happen. I think it will be contingent upon what our budget cuts are going to be. So, Madam Chair, that concludes my review of the Chief Academic Officer. So I'll stand for questions on that department at this time.
Okay, could I ask that you go on through Chief of Communications too, so we get those done, and then we'll break.
All right, so Chief of Communication, really, there's really no significant change, so there's really nothing to really review in that regard.
Perfect. Okay, I will open it up for questions. Board Member Cullen.
This is Board Member Cullen. I'm good. Thank you.
Board Member Coleman.
No questions.
Board President Galbraith.
No questions.
Vice Chair Morgan.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we will move on to Chief Operations Officer.
Okay, Chief Operations Officer, and that is yours truly. And so the major departments under my department is the Facility Department, the Finance Department, Human Resources, Information Technology, Safety and Security, and Transportation, which Transportation actually has its own separate budget and is tracked separately because those funds are legally supposed to be paid for 100% by the state. We know that unfortunately is not the case. There really are not too many changes here. you will see what appears to be a fairly significant increase in the facility department. And there's a number of reasons for that increase. The first increase has to do with the custodial service resided in the facility department. Last fiscal year, we broke up the custodial service and it was budgetarily assigned to each individual school. We did that for a year, and essentially it just hasn't gone that well. Especially now with COVID-19, we know that the service needs to be really, I don't want to use the word professionalized, but we know that in the near future, cleaning and disinfecting is going to take a whole new meaning. And there's going to be a lot more training, different type of chemicals. We use green type chemicals. And so there's going to be a much greater emphasis on janitorial work. And we felt that this would be a good time to actually move it back into the facility department. And so this way we can make sure that all the janitors get the appropriate training, that every school has the same type of supplies, and that those supplies meet federal regulations, and also the equipment. There's new types of equipment that's coming out now to ensure that our schools, all our surfaces within those schools are appropriately disinfected. The next area of increase within the facility department has simply to do with repair and maintenance. And one of the things that happened during the Great Recession, and typically happens whenever you're in a budgetary downturn, is usually repair and maintenance takes a hit. And what happens is when you divert funds away from maintenance, things kind of build up over time and they break down more frequently. And sometimes your costs, your replacement costs are actually greater than the amount of money that you actually saved. So in the last few years, we've actually beefed up repair and maintenance, trying to get our schools repaired, for example, roof repairs and other type of repairs, hot water heaters, and the list goes on and on and on, to try to get caught up from many, many years of a budgetary decline. And so in the balanced budget, we do have that continued increase in repair and maintenance. And so again, that's why you see an increase there. The biggest increase by far with facilities has to do with $1.7 million in operational that has been approved by PED in order to do the renovation to the Student Support Center. So currently those funds are in our balanced budget currently. And then finally, the other increase in the facility department has to do with supply assets. And those are equipment needs that we plan on purchasing, again, a lot of the janitorial to enhance our cleaning and our disinfecting in the school sites once we open up our buildings in the future. And I'm confident and optimistic that we will be opening up those buildings. It's really just a matter of time. The next change in my department has to do with information technology. And there appears to be a pretty significant increase. But really what that increase is we had some of our, actually quite a bit of our software, almost approximately $500,000, that were actually resided in our SB9 budget. And so it's been that way for a number of years. And I felt that our SB9 budget really should be focused on projects and not with continued operations such as software. So the software that we purchase is software that we use year after year after year, and it's truly an operational type of expense, and it's not a one-time project type of an expense. And so this type of software we need for operations, and we will be in front of the voters, I believe, within a couple of years to ask the voters to reapprove the mill levy. And the question would be, well, what happens if the voters don't approve it? Well, we just simply could not provide for software for the district. So therefore, we decided it would be prudent for us to move software, all of the software expense into operations. And that is the reason why you see a significant increase there. So that wraps up the Chief Operations Officer department, and I will stand for questions. And as Ms. Scott comes in and
Sorry.
asks, that's all right. And so we just wrapped up the
Yes.
Chief Operations, so I stand for questions for that.
All right, Board Member Coleman.
I'm good, thank you.
Board Member Cullen.
Yes, thank you. So I know you were talking about the transportations in another area, but you kind of touched on it real quick about the $1 million shortfall. I think when I had asked about that with the last legislative session, my notes from your department said that we should know by the end of the month. So have we heard anything if we're going to get that money?
Yes, so as it stands now, they are not, the word we got now, they are not providing us that $1 million. So we will be going back up to the state. And so what the Deputy Director of Finance informed us was that they were going to carve out some type of an exception where if districts did not, if districts were short on operational money for their transportation because of an apparent flaw in the formula, that we can appeal to them to have them look at our budget to make sure that our budget was appropriate and that it wasn't that it is a formula issue and not a budgetary issue. So this is something that was promised to us from the Deputy Secretary. It was also talked about at the legislative subcommittee. And so we are going to have to go through that process in order to attempt to try to capture our funding.
And so what is the length of that process? I mean, obviously we know that we're going to be really short anyway. So I don't know if the state will end up giving it to us, even if we go through that process. But how long is that process to see when we can get that?
Yeah, I have no idea. This is something that's brand new.
Okay.
And I'll be honest with you, I am not optimistic.
No, either am I, especially with everything that's going on. So, but I knew they were trying to work on it, and they keep saying we're working on it, we'll try to get it, and we just never do.
And that's correct. And they've been saying they've been working on it for what, I don't know, I think this is the 8th year maybe.
Right. Okay.
So there appeared to be a lot of movement this past year because it's not just Rio Rancho, but there were a number of other districts in the same exact boat that we are. There was a lot of distension in regard to not having transportation provided by districts, interestingly, our size, but yet the much smaller districts actually have surplus.
Right.
So, we're kind of upset about that because we're underfunded by about $1 million this year, maybe even a little bit more, whereas a number of the smaller districts actually receive a surplus. So we believe that there's a clear disconnect between what's really happening out there on the street and the way the PED arrives at their budgetary numbers for transportation.
Okay, thank you.
Board President Galbraith,
I don't have any questions. Thanks.
Vice Chair Jeffrey Morgan.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I guess we will move on to Fiduciary.
Okay, so I will, I'm gonna lump, just gonna go take care of Fiduciary, Office of Legal Counsel, and school sites, all at once. So, legal counsel, this is will be the first full year of the operations of legal counsel. Again, it's nothing really different there other than segregating the funds from the superintendent's budget over to the Office of Legal Counsel, which is Lauren Hatch. The fiduciary, there are a number of changes in the fiduciary account. Earlier in our last meeting, I talked about workers' compensation. That's where the expenditure is housed, workers' compensation. We saw an increase in workers' compensation. Because of COVID-19, there is a positive, hard to believe, but our copy machine charges have actually decreased, so we've seen some changes there. We also had our software, which is our main software for HR and for finance, which is called Alio. Because that affected multiple departments, we actually had that housed in the fiduciary department. So what we did is we moved all the software into the IT department. So there was a slight change there, and our unrestricted cash dipped a little bit. So you'll see when you look at the fiduciary, you see a decrease of approximately 8%. But essentially the department really is operating the same. The next area are our school sites. Our school site.
No, we did.
Yeah, I did that. Our school sites are receiving the same funding in regard to operational. The only change there is we do have a new school site, as you know, Joe Harris Elementary School. We are moving forward with opening Joe Harris. As a matter of fact, I was recently took a tour of the facility. It's an absolutely beautiful school building. I'm sure you will all be absolutely proud of our new facility, so will the community. We are on schedule, on budget with Joe Harris. It appears at this time that we will open up on time. Of course, we're about a month away, so keep your fingers crossed because anything could happen because of these times. But most of the equipment and supplies have been ordered. So as long as we don't have our orders get back ordered, I think we'll be able to open up on time in regard to Joe Harris. Also took a tour this morning of Shining Star Preschool. Which is another new school site that we will be opening up, although you don't see a change in operational because the operational from existing site will simply be moved over to the new site. We are having some issues at Shining Star Preschool. It appears that we will probably be a little bit late on that facility. I know there's a meeting tomorrow to try to firm up the dates. Shining Star Preschool, they are having issues with the delivery with some of the materials such as lighting and transformers. So we'll, as we get closer on that, we'll let you know how those construction projects are moving, and hopefully we will be able to be on time with that. as well. So that really wraps up my summary on the expenses for the 2021 operational budget. Just another reminder, budget won't see the light of day, unfortunately, because it's a good budget. It gives us some nice enhancements to our district. Unfortunately, we find ourselves in this situation, not just with COVID-19, but also with the reduction in state revenues. But as we move forward and we get clearer direction from the state, we will be back to the Finance Committee to make the necessary amendments to our budget when the time occurs. So I stand for questions at this time.
Okay, Board Member Cullen. Board Member Cullen, do you have?
Yes, this is Board Member Cullen. So how much, I see that we've spent on the Yossi lawsuit. It was one of my questions was we've spent about $194,403. How much did the board actually authorize? Because I know when we originally got into it, we had authorized below 100,000, I think, when all of us districts had put in for it. And so we're now a bit higher than that, and I see we budgeted some more for the next fiscal year.
Yeah, so I don't have an answer to that, but we will look into that. But it's my understanding that those expenditures, the total of those expenditures are over 1 year. Is that?
Over multiple years.
Yeah, it's over multiple years.
3, maybe?
And the cost is still being shared throughout all the districts?
The districts that participated in the lawsuit, yes.
Right. So is this money that they asked for us to budget into our budget for this year?
That, to be honest with you, is our absolute gross estimate. So we really don't know. We really don't know what it's going to cost us. We just took a stab at it.
Okay, yeah. So if you can get those figures, because it's been going on for quite a few years, and I think it's still going to continue for quite a few more years as well once they get this figured out. So I'm just trying to see long term of what we're looking at for this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Let me add a couple of things on that if I could.
Sorry, Dr. Cleveland, I didn't know you were with us.
They're doing a great job, so I'm just kind of listening along with all of you. We are going back to court at the end of June to do an update with the judge, and of course it's a new judge. The other really big wrinkle in all of this is that Gail Evans, who has been the lead attorney through all these years, has quit. And so, realistically, I don't know where this lawsuit is going, given the financial realities of the state and the financial realities of districts. And I don't know what the judge is going to do with this. I don't think he will set it completely aside. But there will, you're right, probably the impact of this will go on for a long time. But know that what the governor is asking is that she be released, the state be released, and the lawsuit be over. And if the judge were to rule that way, then the lawsuit ends. So by the end of June, we probably will have a lot more information we can share with the rest of the board about where we think this is going, and then you can weigh in on it at that time. But Gail has gone on to be the attorney for an environmental group in Santa Fe. I don't recall the exact name of it, but I did want you to be aware that's kind of where we are. I don't know what the future of this lawsuit is really going to look like. But should the judge choose to dismiss the case, then it's over. So I'll keep you informed on that.
Thank you, Dr. Cleveland. Board Member Coleman.
No questions, just a request. When it comes time to us looking at the changes that we're going to have to make for the budget. I would like to add that we have kind of the when it comes to the printout of the specifics, and let me give you the correct form, the budget preparation report. What I'd like to be able to see is what is today. Hi, Tracy, you look confused. So in Google Docs, so PDF, the PDF that have
Just the ones that you're talking about?
So you want
Budget. Go ahead.
the budget preparation reports for the different departments
Oh, yeah.
and Google Docs. What I'm just asking is that so we really can look at what things we're approving now. I'd like to be able to have access to that in addition to what we have to go back and revise. So we can do a side-by-side comparison of where we're cutting just with those details. So if you could include that. So just a request.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We'll have a detailed line item by line item report that we can put together when that time comes.
Okay, and even if you just leave it in, if you leave it in there now, I mean, what's in there now, and then just load the additional, that would be helpful for us as we then have further discussions down the road. So thank you.
Sure. Okay. Board President Galbraith.
No questions. I thought those were good thoughts, though, from Wynn to kind of have a comparison. So thanks.
Okay. Vice Chair Morgan.
No questions. Thank you.
And I have only one question. What happens to the current facility of Shining Stars?
Yes, so Madam Chair, what will happen is when everything is moved out, we will do one of two things. Eventually, we'll likely, we'll come up with some alternatives. I'm sure we'll come to the school board, but those alternatives will include, for example, selling the facility as is, leveling the facility, cleaning up the grounds, possibly rezoning it, putting it up for sale as maybe a parcel that's rezoned with no buildings on it. Those are just two possibilities.
Do we know what the acreage is?
I believe it's somewhere between 12, 13 acres off the top of my head.
All right. Thank you. Are there any more questions from anyone?
I'd just like to make a comment on, I think we have mentioned that we will have to be doing some cuts. The other thing that needs to be out there on your radar screen is that there's going to be some additional expenditures that are going to come with needing to reopen the schools. Things like the PPE equipment for staff, maybe for students, where there's a whole lot of new expenses that we will have to work into the budget. And so it's not just all what we cut, but it's what we cut and how we provide for the things that will be required in order to get the schools reopened. So just so that you keep that on your radar screen, we will be getting, as you know, some CARES money. But that money is not going to take care of all of the increased costs and needs that we're going to have, I'm afraid. And that money would be easily spent multiple times. So, but there will be some costs with reopening the schools.
Thank you, Dr. Cleveland. At this point of our agenda, it looks like we have gotten the budget and we just need to plan for our next Finance Committee meeting, which is scheduled for June 8th, 2020. Unless there's any reason to add anything to that, I think we're adjourned. Okay, we're adjourned and we'll see you all in a few hours.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good job, Mike.
Right?
You just close it. Okay.
Where there's the, right in the middle where it's red.
Oh, right.
Arlene? I'll